Welcome back to Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice, helping organizations to survive and thrive. We're going to tell your story to our community. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis, and we're in the gorgeous Central Library in downtown Kansas City, part of our monthly Out and About series, getting out, being visible. You might hear some sounds in the background as they get ready for a naturalization ceremony here. The library is one of the busiest places in Kansas City, very robust services. Incredible place if you haven't checked it out. Check out your local libraries. They are today's community centers and offer lots of things. But we want to introduce our listeners to a wonderful woman who's with an organization that we've had on, but it's been some time. And I'm talking about Linda Ward, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the Center for Practical Bioethics. Welcome. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Let's go back and refresh for those of our listeners who are aware of what the center is, and maybe a few who just can't recall it or aren't familiar. Practical bioethics, what does that mean, and what does the center do?
Well, it's a great question, and a lot of people have that question. The center was actually founded in 1984. We've been doing this work a long time now, right here in Kansas City, both locally and nationally. And bioethics is really a framework for inserting moral discourse into conversations and decision making around healthcare. Sometimes people call this healthcare ethics, and that's a little more easy for people to understand. Bioethics is really a broader term than health ethics, so that's why we say bioethics. But we work with families, we work with patients, we work with clinicians, we work with institutions that provide health care to really make sure that there's a framework for a conversation that answers the question, not just what can we do, but what ought we do. And as technology increases exponentially, the lists of what we can do often outpace what we ought to do. And we provide a framework for families to have that conversation both within their family and with their caregivers.
The center started back in the mid-'80s. Are we unique? Are there like centers around the country?
We are unique and very proudly unique. Many universities and health systems have a bioethics function inside the system, but there are really only two freestanding bioethics centers in the country. One is the Hastings Center in New York, which focuses on research and publishing the Hastings Report. They were actually founded 15 years before us. But we introduced practical bioethics to the country and to the Kansas City region, which we think of as our home and our laboratory. But it really is taking the ethical concepts, the results of the research, the thinking of people over many generations of increases in what we can do in healthcare, and really providing a framework that's simple for families to think about on their own terms when they need it the most.
And how do you reach out to John Jane Q public? For example, I have a friend right now whose significant other has been in the hospital, brain hemorrhage, all those kinds of things, where thought process and decision making goes into, as you say, beyond, do we give that medication? Do we try this therapy?
Yeah, it's certainly for that crisis situation, but what we long for and promote loud and clear, I hope, through our great website, through Lunch and Learns, through trainings that we do for clinicians, we really don't want people to wait until they have a brain hemorrhage to have these conversations. We think this is for everyone, and it is for everyone 18 and older. When people reach the age of majority, your parents just can't automatically make decisions on your behalf, which is shocking to parents. But everybody 18 and older needs to think about these things. I do an exercise, and we have a program at Hallmark where we do Lunch and Learns for Hallmark employees. They think this is part of being one of the best employers on the planet, to think about these issues for families. And I talk about, everybody thinks this is not for them, but we're one person texting in an intersection section away from being unconscious at the scene of a car accident. It could happen to any of us at any time. And while we might recover, there'll be a period of time while we're unconscious that other people are making decisions on our behalf. And we think that's important, and we think it's important for everybody to express what they would want if they, whatever, could not get better, could not interact with their family, could not, what they would want. And it's of absolutely no concern to us what you say you want. It's the issue of understanding the issues and being able to communicate and have someone speak for you when you can't speak for yourself.
Which gets us into this great program and effort that you have, this advanced care planning.
Yes.
Define that for us.
So advanced care planning is simply saying ahead of a crisis, as you laid out a second ago. It's an opportunity to quietly think through your own values. It really starts with your values, and what's important to me in my life. What do I not want to live without? In some cases, when someone's ill, it's I want to keep doing this chemotherapy so I can get to my granddaughter's wedding.
Right.
What are your values? What's important to you? Document that in our workbook that we call Caring Conversations. And then it also gives you an opportunity to think through the most common dilemmas, like should we insert a feeding tube with mom who is in her 14th year of Alzheimer's? Is that what she would have wanted? If you don't know, families can be in conflict about that. The other big issue is ventilator. Do I want to be ventilator dependent? The workbook gives you a kind of a checklist to think through because these aren't issues we all deal with all the time.
How can people get this workbiotic?
Well, astonishingly, it's free on our website.
That is amazing. So give us the website, something that's free, everybody.
Practicalbioethics.org. You may download a copy of our Caring Conversations workbook, and we have other tools there that might be helpful. And then if you, we have hospitals order thousands of these a year. And if you're ordering more than just for you and your family, we want you to order them from us and we'll ship them to you. But they're very inexpensive and absolutely worth it. And the other important thing I think we need to be sure is this is not a one and done activity. I was doing a workshop one time when a woman came in and said she really wasn't sure why she had come because she had done this 25 years ago. And she was a little critical of people in the room who were just hearing about it for the first time. She said things like, everybody knows you have to do this. Every responsible person has done this, which is not true. About 29% of Americans have done this, even though 98% of us say it's a good thing to do. But I just thanked her for coming. I said, how forward thinking of you. And this terrible look came over her face. And I said, are you okay? And she said, oh my God, my ex-husband's on that form. And it was kind of, for me, a teachable moment that this is not a one and done activity. Your healthcare status changes. I said earlier, we want 18 and older to do this. Most 18-year-olds are mercifully healthy, but we know over time that can change. So as your health status changes, as your family situation changes, as your wishes change, this is something you can do over and over through your lifetime and should.
This time of year, when you have those family gathering opportunities, or we should say any time of year, let's say you're gathering for a graduation or a wedding, is that a time to take and talk and maybe even fill it out?
Yes, it absolutely is. And people find it very difficult. They don't want to be
right. It's not an easy conversation.
It's not an easy conversation, and we're very sympathetic to that. So we've tried to give people some tools and mechanism to say, I know nobody wants to talk about it, but I want to talk about me. I want you to know what I want and who I've named and why. And that's important because we have people in hospitals who have a copy of a patient's advance directive. and there's a name on it and a contact information. They call that person, and the person had no idea they had been named by that person. And that's not fair. You're putting that person.
So tell somebody if you put them on the list,
Yes,
huh?
absolutely. And then you tell the rest of the family members who you've named and that you love them equally. But this person, and we have some qualifications for a great agent. I tell people your kids are not all created equal. You know which one is good in a crisis, which one is closest to you, which one is near you. Um, and give them the backing now to say, I love you all, but I've named Ben or Mary or whoever it is. And I want you to support them at when the time comes in making this difficult decision that I've asked him or her to make. And then you have the opportunity for everybody to weigh in and say, well, that'd be uncomfortable for me, Mom. I don't want you to do that. And you say, you know what, this is my decision. And I hope you will think it through and do your own advanced care plan and name somebody to speak for you as well. We talk a lot at the center about the greatest peace of mind possible. And we know families are torn apart when there are disagreements about what mom would have wanted. If mom is not able to speak for herself, and we fondly call it the son from California swooping in at the last minute, threatening the hospital if they don't do everything to save mom's life. And mom's had a long, good life. Mom's been very clear that when she doesn't know her family, when she can't eat by herself, whatever her wishes are,
Right.
and you can say whatever you want. But we think it's worthy work to represent someone as an agent. It should not be taken lightly to agree to be an agent for someone, and that you should think carefully about who you choose to be your agent.
Once you complete this workbook and this advanced care plan, where should it go? What happens with it? Is it a legal document?
It should absolutely not go in your safety deposit box where no one
Because it's
can
probably not
find
reachable
it.
in an emergency.
Exactly. Now, because of work of the center and the Patient Self-Determination Act and other things the center worked on over the years, no one enters a hospital without somebody saying, do you have an advance directive or do you wish to make one? That's lovely, but that's not the time to be thinking
doing those
about it
decision
for the
making.
first time. If you haven't, of course, do it then. But hospitals will put them in their files for you. Like, I'm likely to go to a certain hospital in Kansas City because it's near my home. They have a copy of that in the record they have for me. I gave one to my physician. My family members all have copies. So we're not just looking for the one elusive copy. And people say, well, what if I change it and somebody has one and somebody has another? They're dated and notarized.
Right.
We'll know which one is the most recent one. But it is important that people know how to find this document. And we have a new partner, a company called My Directives, that allows you to scan our workbook and put it in the cloud. So it's really accessible from any place in the world that you might be hospitalized or ill, as long as there's access to the internet.
Is there a tug of war between when the family says, here's my directive, and the medical staff? I mean, hospitals are big institutions,
Sure.
medical facilities, and they've got what they need to protect and cover versus the patient. So how does that get melded together so everybody's kind of working for the same team?
Well, it's sometimes a fraught situation. In many cases, the family has been through a long course of illness, maybe a long hospitalization. Everybody's exhausted, and that's why it's good to have these conversations ahead of time, not be doing this when everybody's tired. And you have resources at the hospital. We get calls all the time from people. We know these hospitals in our region and many more around the country, and sometimes we can help sort things out. But there are ethics committees in every hospital who you can call on as a family member or as a hospital person who thinks a family's making the wrong decision, and have kind of a fair hearing from the ethics committee about what are the issues and are we asking the right questions, and do we have mom's wishes at the heart of this conversation, not anybody else's. That's the point. And the center has trained ethics committees for decades here in Kansas City and around the country.
How big is your team?
Well, there are 10 of us. There are just 10 of us, but we have many colleagues around the country who do this work in hospitals and who come to speak. We have free lectures and do a lot of training of medical students in this region. So we have lots of people who have been trained by Rosemary Flanagan and Myra Christopher and Terry Roselle around the community, who are very well equipped to be helpful in addition to our current staff.
One thing that came to mind in these advanced care, the plan is how do you wander through the religious issues? Is there any of that taken into account in the actual workbook?
Sure. It's extremely important, and it is important in direct correlation with how valuable it is to the patient and the family. And our hospitals are very well prepared to be respectful of wishes that have roots in religion. One of the interesting things that we've done recently is really work with Catholic dioceses around the country. Many Catholic hospitals are operating around the country. More people are in a Catholic hospital than the others all put together, I just heard recently.
Oh my gosh, that's an interesting statistic.
And I think it's interesting, and there are issues as you mentioned. So finding language to be sure everybody's listening to everybody, finding language to help make sure the conversation is civil and rooted in the values of the patient.
It's the Center for Practical Bioethics. It's headquartered in Kansas City. You're doing incredible work everywhere. And importantly, you're right here, your hometown. And what I love is it comes to mind is Center for Proactive Practical Bioethics, that there's no time like the present.
Yes,
Take
absolutely.
the time.
Take the time and use the holidays as a time you can do that. Everybody's gathered. Do your own first and share it with others, and then give them a copy of Caring Conversations. We're happy to fill your orders before Thanksgiving, and just go online at practicalbioethics.org.
Linda, thank you for joining us.
You are so welcome. My pleasure.